Moldova, Moldovi, sometimes UK, Moldivi, Romanian pronunciation, Moldova, officially the Republic of Moldova, Romanian, Republica Moldova, is a landlocked country in Eastern Europe, on the northeastern corner of the Balkans. The country spans a total of 33,483 square kilometers, 13,067 square miles, and has a population of approximately 2.5 million as of January 2023. Moldova is bordered by Romania to the west and Ukraine to the north, east, and south. The unrecognized breakaway state of Transnistria lies across the Dniester River on the country's eastern border with Ukraine. Moldova is a unitary parliamentary representative democratic republic with its capital in Chișinău, the country's largest city and main cultural and commercial center. Most of Moldovan territory was a part of the Principality of Moldavia from the 14th century until 1812, when it was ceded to the Russian Empire by the Ottoman Empire, to which Moldavia was a vassal state, and became known as Bessarabia. In 1856, southern Bessarabia was returned to Moldavia, which 3 years later united with Wallachia to form Romania, but Russian rule was restored over the whole of the region in 1878. During the 1917 Russian Revolution, Bessarabia briefly became an autonomous state within the Russian Republic. In February 1918, it declared independence and then integrated into Romania later that year following a vote of its assembly. The decision was disputed by Soviet Russia, which in 1924 established, within the Ukrainian SSR, a so-called Moldavian Autonomous Republic on partially Moldovan inhabited territories to the east of Bessarabia. In 1940, as a consequence of the Molotov–Ribbentrop Pact, Romania was compelled to cede Bessarabia and northern Bukovina to the Soviet Union, leading to the creation of the Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic, Moldavian SSR. On 27 August 1991, as the dissolution of the Soviet Union was underway, the Moldavian SSR declared independence and took the name Moldova. However, the strip of Moldovan territory on the east bank of the Dniester has been under the de facto control of the breakaway government of Transnistria since 1990. The Constitution of Moldova was adopted in 1994, and the country became a parliamentary republic with a president as head of state and a prime minister as head of government. Under the presidency of Maia Sandu, elected in 2020 on a pro-Western and anti-corruption ticket, Moldova has pursued membership of the European Union, and was granted candidate status in June 2022. Sandu has also suggested an end to Moldova's constitutional commitment to military neutrality in favor of a closer alliance with NATO and strongly condemned Russia's invasion of neighboring Ukraine. Moldova is the second poorest country in Europe by GDP per official capita after Ukraine, and much of its GDP is dominated by the service sector. It has one of the lowest human development indexes in Europe, ranking 76th in the world, 2022. Moldova ranks 56th in the world on the Global Innovation Index as of 2022. Moldova is a member state of the United Nations, the Council of Europe, the World Trade Organization, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the Guam Organization for Democracy and Economic Development, the Organization of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation, and the Association Trio.
Etymology.
The name Moldova is derived from the Moldova River, German Moldai. The valley of this river served as a political center at the time of the foundation of the Principality of Moldavia in 1359. The origin of the name of the river remains unclear. According to a legend recounted by Moldavian chroniclers Dimitri Cantemir and Grigore Ureș, Prince Drago named the river after hunting aurochs. Following the chase, the prince's exhausted hound Molda, Siva, was drowned in the river. The dog's name, given to the river, extended to the principality. For a short time in the 1990s, at the founding of the Commonwealth of Independent States, the name of the current Republic of Moldova was also spelled Moldavia. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the country began to use the Romanian name, Moldova. Officially, the name Republic of Moldova is designated by the United Nations.
History. Prehistory.
The prehistory of Moldova covers the period from the Upper Paleolithic, which begins with the presence of Homo sapiens in the area of southeastern Europe some 44,000 years ago, and extends into the appearance of the first written records in classical antiquity in Greece. In 2010, old Owl and flint tools were discovered at Bayraki that are 800,001.2 million years old. During the Neolithic Age, Moldova's territory stood at the center of the large Cucuteni Tripilia culture that stretched east beyond the Dniester River in Ukraine and west up to and beyond the Carpathian Mountains in Romania. The people of this civilization, which lasted roughly from 5500 to 2750 BC, practiced agriculture, raised livestock, hunted, and made intricately designed pottery.
Antiquity and the early Middle Ages.
This area of present-day Moldova was inhabited by ancient Dacians, and Moldovans identify themselves with their ancestors. Carpian tribes also inhabited Moldova's territory in the period of classical antiquity. Between the 1st and 7th centuries AD, the south came intermittently under the control of the Roman and then the Byzantine empires. Due to its strategic location on a route between Asia and Europe, the territory of modern Moldova experienced many invasions in late antiquity and the early Middle Ages, notably by Goths, Huns, Avars, Bulgars, Magyars, Pechenegs, Cumans, Mongols and Tatars. In the 11th century, a Viking by the name of Rodfos was possibly killed in the area by the Blacumen who betrayed him. In 1164, the future Byzantine emperor Andronikos I Komnenos, while attempting to reach the Principality of Halych, was taken prisoner by Vlachs, possibly in the area which now constitutes Moldova. The East Slavic Hypatian Chronicle, 13th century, mentions the Bolohovany people, who resided on the eastern fringes of Moldovan territory and in the Rus principalities of Halych, Volhynia and Kiev. Their ethnic origin is disputed by historians. Archaeological research has identified the location of 13th-century fortified settlements in this region. The Bolohovany disappeared from written chronicles after they were defeated in 1257 by Daniel of Galicia. In the early 13th century, the Brodniks, a possible Slavic Vlach vassal tribe of Halych, were also present in much of the region's territory.
COVID-19 pandemic.
In March 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the government called a national red code alert, as the number of coronavirus cases in the country rose to 6 on 13 March 2020. Government banned all gatherings of over 50 people until 1 April 2020 and closed all schools and kindergartens in an attempt to curb the spread of the virus. Flights were banned to Spain, Italy, France, Austria, Belgium, Czech Republic, Cyprus, Germany, Ireland, the UK, Poland, Portugal and Romania. On 17 March, Parliament declared a state of emergency for at least 60 days, suspended all international flights and closed borders with neighbors Romania and Ukraine. Moldova reported 29 cases of the disease on 17 March 2020. The country reported its first death from the disease on 18 March 2020, when the total number of cases reached 30. According to the World Health Organization, between 3 January 2020 and 28 June 2023, there have been 620,717 confirmed cases of COVID-19 with 12,124 deaths. As of the 11th of June 2023, a total of 2,288,948 vaccine doses have been administered. Moldova is among the first countries in the WHO European region to conduct a COVID-19 Interaction Review, IAR, upon the request of Moldova's Ministry of Health, Labour and Social Protection.
Presidency of Maia Sandu since 2020.
In the November 2020 presidential election, the pro-European opposition candidate Maia Sandu was elected as the new president of the republic, defeating incumbent pro-Russian President Igor Dodon and thus becoming the first female elected president of Moldova. In December 2020, Prime Minister Ion Chicu, who had led a pro-Russian government since November 2019, resigned a day before Sandu was sworn in. The parliament, dominated by pro-Russian socialists, did not accept any prime minister candidate proposed by the new president. On 28 April 2021, Sandu dissolved the Parliament of the Republic of Moldova after the Constitutional Court ended Moldova's state of emergency which had been brought about by the coronavirus pandemic. Parliamentary elections took place on 11 July 2021. The snap parliamentary elections resulted in a landslide win for the pro-European Party of Action and Solidarity, PAR. On 6 August 2021, the Natalia Gavrilia-led cabinet was sworn into office with 61 votes, all from the Party of Action and Solidarity, PAR. Gavrilia resigned on 10 February 2023 and was replaced by Doran Rasian as Prime Minister of Moldova. Since Maia Sandu was elected president of Moldova, the country has pursued the goal of full membership of the European Union by 2030 as well as deeper cooperation with NATO. This resulted in Moldova signing the membership application to join the EU on 3 March 2022, and on 23 June 2022, Moldova was officially granted candidate status by EU leaders. Fighting corruption has been a major government initiative, one also essential to EU membership. On 8 June 2021, Sandu signed off on the creation of an extra-governmental corruption monitoring body after declaring the state's own institutions too slow. The 6-member panel of the Anti-Corruption Independent Consultative Committee will be co-chaired by United States diplomat James Wasserstrom, includes economists, jurists and journalists, and is partially funded by the European Union and United States. This was followed by the Moldovan government suspending the Prosecutor General Alexandru Stoianoglu in relation to charges of corruption. Former Moldovan Prime Minister Iuri Lanka was charged with abuse of power. The former President Igor Dodon was arrested by the Moldovan authorities on charges of corruption for the receipt of bribes. Russia's invasion of Ukraine caused significant economic turmoil in Moldova throughout 2022, in particular due to its reliance at that time on Russian oil and gas, with annual inflation surging to 22% and growth falling from a post-COVID surge of 14% to 0.3%. In response to these shockwaves, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, put a total of $2 billion, $1.74 billion, into the Moldovan economy and helped it secure gas supplies, a five-fold increase over 2021. As of 18 May 2023, Moldovan Prime Minister Doran Rasian confirmed that the country is 100% independent of Russian oil and natural gas. He stated that, Moldova no longer consumes Russian gas, it is integrated in the European energy network both technically and commercially. On 19 June 2023, the pro-Russian OR party was banned by the Constitutional Court of Moldova after months of pro-Russian protests seeking to destabilize the Moldovan government. The court declared the party unconstitutional, with court chairman Nicolae Roca citing an article in the constitution stating that parties must through their activities uphold political pluralism, the rule of law and the territorial integrity of Moldova. The party was led by Ilan Shaw, a fugitive businessman who fled to Israel in 2019 after being convicted of fraud and money laundering and sentenced to 15 years in prison in absentia. President Sandu welcomed the court's decision. On 26 June, Ilan Shaw announced that he would create a new political party in order to contest the upcoming general election. On 31 July, the Moldovan parliament voted in favor of banning the leaders of the dissolved pro-Russian OR party including Ilan Shaw from standing in elections for a period of 5 years. Leader and founder of the party, Ilan OR, currently a fugitive of the state, has claimed he will contest the ban.
Russia-related events since the invasion of neighboring Ukraine.
In February 2022, Sandu condemned the Russian invasion of Ukraine, calling it a blatant breach of international law and of Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity. Prime Minister Natalia Gavrilita stated on 28 February 2022 that Moldova should rapidly move to become a member of the European Union despite Russian objections. According to Bloomberg, as the Russian invasion of Ukraine took place, the Moldovan government's computer systems used for security operations along the Ukraine border came under attack from Russia. As the war progressed, pro-Russian social media accounts spread false claims designed to discredit the Moldovan government, and trolls bombarded Moldovan authorities with thousands of fake bomb threats. In August, hackers breached email servers used by the Moldovan president's office. In November, hackers also published thousands of private messages they claimed to have stolen from Anna Revenko, Moldova's Minister of Internal Affairs, and Sergiu Litvinenko, who was then serving as Minister of Justice. A sustained campaign of cyberwarfare from Russia against Moldova has continued with the war, with denial-of-service attempts to flood Moldovan government websites with traffic and force them offline. There's also been a sustained campaign of phishing emails targeting government accounts, with more than 1,300 received in early 2023. According to the UNHCR, since 24 February 2022, more than 780,000 Ukrainian refugees were permitted to cross the border into Moldova. Of that number, some 107,000 chose to remain in Moldova, the rest seeking asylum further afield. The country has received praise from the United Nations for its efforts to protect Ukrainian refugees, despite being among the poorest nations in Europe. About 75% of the Ukrainian refugees in Moldova have been hosted by ordinary Moldovan families, sharing their homes with their new guests. The government's own efforts have been aided by Moldovans for Peace, an NGO civic initiative to provide help to Ukrainian refugees. The World Health Organization has stated that the Republic of Moldova's authorities and humanitarian entities have demonstrated leadership in responding to the needs of refugees fleeing the war in Ukraine. On 26 April 2022, authorities from the Transnistria region said two transmitting antennas broadcasting Russian radio programs at Grigoriopol transmitter broadcasting facility near the town of Mayak in the Grigoriopol district near the Ukrainian border had been blown up, and the previous evening, the premises of the Transnistrian State Security Service had been attacked. The Russian army has a military base and a large ammunition dump in the region. Russia has about 1,500 soldiers stationed in breakaway Transnistria. They are supposed to serve there as peacekeepers. In March 2022, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe recognized Transnistria as a Moldovan territory occupied by Russia. On 24 February, the Russian Foreign Ministry claimed that an attack on Transnistria would be an attack on the Russian Federation. According to the Kyiv Independent, there is speculation that this is a facade for a Russian plan to invade or destabilize Moldova. President Sandu dismissed that Moldova intended to invade Transnistria and called for calm. The Moldovan government expressed its alarm and concern in April 2023 when Russian soldiers stationed in Transnistria undertook military maneuvers without seeking Chinu's consent. The security zone is managed by the Unified Control Commission, UCC, which consists of representatives from Moldova, Russia, and the separatist regime in Tiraspol. Between February and April, Russian armored military equipment moved outside the range of the joint peacekeeping forces. The maneuver was not coordinated with the Unified Control Commission. On 8 May, Transnistria's envoy to Moscow, Leonid Manikov, publicly requested that Russia should send more Russian soldiers into Transnistria because of what it called growing security risks from Ukraine and Moldova. Manikov also stated that, as long as Russia's peacekeeping mission continues, Moldova is constrained in any military plans and preparations against Transnistria. Moldova's Prime Minister, Doran Rasian, said that Russian troops should be expelled from the region. On 31 October 2022, Moldova's Interior Ministry said that debris from a Russian missile landed in the northern village of Neslavsia after a Russian fusillade was intercepted by air defenses in neighboring Ukraine. The ministry reported no people were hurt, but the windows of several residential homes were shattered. The Russian strike was targeting a Ukrainian dam on the Dnistru River that runs through Moldova and Ukraine. On 5 December, another missile fell near the city of Brysinai as Russia launched another wave of missile strikes against Ukraine. Yet another missile fell into Laga on 14 January 2023 as a result of another wave of missile strikes against Ukraine, and again on the same village on 16 February of the same year. Russia's 10-year plan, written in 2021, was leaked to the international press, involved supporting pro-Russian groups, utilizing the Orthodox Church and threatening to cut off supplies of natural gas with the aim to destabilize Moldova. In February 2023, an attempted coup by a series of Russian-backed actors was uncovered involving saboteurs with military training dressed in civilian clothes to stage attacks, including on state buildings, and take hostages. The Moldovan government was to be overthrown and replaced with a puppet government. The plan allegedly involved an alliance between criminal groups and two exiled Moldovan oligarchs. President Sandu said Russian, Montenegrin, Belarusian, and Serbian citizens were to enter Moldova to incite protests as part of the coup plan. Moldovan intelligence believes foreign provocateurs would be used to foment violent unrest during the anti-government protests. Foreign citizens were also to be involved in violent actions. Sandu credited Ukrainian partners for uncovering locations and logistical aspects of the plot. In a March 10 briefing, United States National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications John Kirby made public information about Russian efforts to destabilize Moldova obtained by the U.S. Kirby stated the U.S. government believes Russia to be pursuing destabilization efforts in Moldova with the ultimate goal of replacing the existing Moldovan government with one that would be more friendly to Russian interests. In July 2023, opposition politician Oleg Korzan, a pro-Russian critic of the Transnistrian government, and leader of the local Pridnestrovy Communist Party in the breakaway Transnistria region, was found dead in his home on the outskirts of Tiraspol. He had been released from prison for less than a year. Reports suggest he had been either shot dead or stabbed. with other reports suggesting signs of torture. The Moldovan National Police has opened an active investigation into his presumed murder.
Politics.
The Republic of Moldova is a constitutional republic with a unicameral parliamentary system of government and competitive, multi-party elections. The constitution provides for executive and legislative branches as well as an independent judiciary and the clear separation of powers. The president serves as the head of state, is elected every 4 years, and can be re-elected once. The prime minister serves as the head of government, appointed by the president with parliament's support. The head of government in turn assembles a cabinet, subject to parliamentary approval. Legislative authority is vested in the unicameral Parliament of Moldova, which has 101 seats and whose members are elected by popular vote on party lists every 4 years. The president's official residence is the Presidential Palace, Chișinău. After the prime minister and government resigned in 2020 and the president and parliament failed to form a new government, early parliamentary elections were held in July 2021. According to Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe observers, the 2021 parliamentary elections were well administered and competitive, and fundamental freedoms were largely respected. The Party of Action and Solidarity won 63 seats in the 101-seat parliament, enough to form a single-party majority.
Founding of the Principality of Moldavia.
The Principality of Moldavia began when a Vlach voivode, military leader, Drago, arrived in the region of the Moldova River. His people from the voivodeship at Maramure soon followed. Drago established a polity as a vassal to the Kingdom of Hungary in the 1350s. The independence of the Principality of Moldavia came when Bogdan I, another Vlach voivode from Maramure who had fallen out with the Hungarian king, crossed the Carpathian Mountains in 1359 and took control of Moldavia, wresting the region from Hungary. The Principality of Moldavia was bounded by the Carpathian Mountains in the west, the Dniester River in the east, and the Danube River and Black Sea to the south. Its territory comprised the present-day territory of the Republic of Moldova, the eastern 8 counties of Romania, and parts of the Chernivtsi Oblast and Bujak region of present-day Ukraine. Locals referred to the principality as Moldova like the present-day Republic and Romania's northeastern region.
Between Poland and Hungary.
The history of what is today Moldova has been intertwined with that of Poland for centuries. The Polish chronicler Jan Długosz mentioned Moldavians as having joined a military expedition in 1342, under King Ladislaus I, against the Margraviate of Brandenburg. The Polish state was powerful enough to counter the Hungarian kingdom, which was consistently interested in bringing the area that would become Moldavia into its political orbit. Ties between Poland and Moldavia expanded after the founding of the Moldavian state by Bogdan of Kőhely, a Vlach voivode from Maramure who had fallen out with the Hungarian king. Crossing the Carpathian Mountains in 1359, the voivode took control of Moldavia and succeeded in creating Moldavia as an independent political entity. Despite being disfavored by the brief union of Angevin Poland and Hungary, the latter was still the country's overlord. Bogdan's successor Leciu, the Moldavian ruler, also likely allied himself with the Poles. Leciu also accepted conversion to Roman Catholicism around 1370, but his gesture was to remain without consequences.
Polish influence grows.
Piotr I profited from the end of the Polish-Hungarian Union and moved the country closer to the Jagiellon realm, becoming a vassal of King Jogaila of Poland on 26 September 1387. This gesture was to have unexpected consequences. Piotr supplied the Polish ruler with funds needed in the war against the Teutonic Knights, and was granted control over Pocutia until the debt was to be repaid. As this is not recorded to have been carried out, the region became disputed by the two states, until it was lost by Moldavia in the Battle of Oberton, 1531. Prince Piotr also expanded his rule southwards to the Danube Delta. His brother Roman I conquered the Hungarian-ruled Szektári Alb in 1392, giving Moldavia an outlet to the Black Sea, before being toppled from the throne for supporting Fyodor Karayatovich in his conflict with Vytautas the Great of Lithuania. Under Stephen I, growing Polish influence was challenged by Sigismund of Hungary, whose expedition was defeated at Gindoani in 1385. However, Stephen disappeared in mysterious circumstances. Although Alexander I was brought to the throne in 1400 by the Hungarians, with assistance from Mircea I of Wallachia, this ruler shifted his allegiances towards Poland, notably engaging Moldavian forces on the Polish side in the Battle of Grunwald and the Siege of Marienburg, and placed his own choice of rulers in Wallachia. His reign was one of the most successful in Moldavia's history.
Increasing Ottoman influence.
For all of his success, it was under the reign of Alexander I that the first confrontation with the Ottoman Turks took place at Setateir Alb in 1420. A deep crisis was to follow Alexander II's long reign, with his successors battling each other in a succession of wars that divided the country until the murder of Bogdan II and the accession of Peter Aron in 1451. Nevertheless, Moldavia was subject to further Hungarian interventions after that moment, as Matthias Corvinus deposed Aron and backed Alexandrul to the throne in Suceava. Peter Aron's rule also signified the beginning of Moldavia's Ottoman Empire allegiance, as the ruler was the first to agree to pay tribute to Sultan Mehmed II.
Moldavia at its apogee.
Peter Aron was eventually ousted by his nephew, Stephen the Great, who would become the most important medieval Moldavian ruler who managed to uphold Moldavia's autonomy against Hungary, Poland and the Ottoman Empire. Under his rule, which lasted 47 years, Moldavia experienced a glorious political and cultural period.
Age of invasions.
During this time, Moldavia was invaded repeatedly by Crimean Tatars and, beginning in the 15th century, by the Ottoman Turks. In 1538, the principality became a tributary to the Ottoman Empire, but it retained internal and partial external autonomy. Nonetheless, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth continued to strongly influence Moldavia both through national politics as well as on the local level through significant intermarriage between Moldavian nobility and the Polish Szlachta. When in May 1600, Michael the Brave removed Uremia Movil from Moldavia's throne by winning the Battle of Baku, briefly reuniting under his rule Moldavia, Wallachia, and Transylvania, a Polish army led by Jan Zamoyski drove the Wallachians from Moldavia. Zamoyski reinstalled Uremia Movil to the throne, who put the country under the vassalage of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Moldavia finally returned to Ottoman vassalage in 1621.
Transnistria.
While the region of Transnistria was never politically part of the Principality of Moldavia, there were sizable areas which were owned by Moldavian boyars or the Moldavian rulers. The earliest surviving deeds referring to lands beyond the Dniester River date from the 16th century. Moldavian chronicler Grigore Uresh mentions that in 1584 some Moldavian villages from beyond the Dniester in the Kingdom of Poland were attacked and plundered by Cossacks. Many Moldavians were members of Cossacks units, with two of them, Ioan Potkov and Neil Apostol, becoming hetmans of Ukraine. Ruxandra Lupu, the daughter of Moldavian voivode Vasile Lupu who married Timish Khmelnytsky, lived in Rukov according to Ukrainian tradition. While most of today's Moldova came into the Ottoman orbit in the 16th century, a substantial part of Transnistria remained a part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth until the Second Partition of Poland in 1793. Russian Empire in accordance with the Treaty of Bucharest of 1812, and despite numerous protests by Moldavian nobles on behalf of the sovereignty of their principality, the Ottoman Empire, of which Moldavia was a vassal, ceded to the Russian Empire the eastern half of the territory of the Principality of Moldavia along with Khotan and Old Bessarabia, modern Budjak, which Russia had already conquered and annexed. The new Russian province was called Oblast of Moldavia and Bessarabia, and initially enjoyed a large degree of autonomy. After 1828 this autonomy was progressively restricted and in 1871 the oblast was transformed into the Bessarabia Governorate, in a process of state-imposed assimilation, Russification. As part of this process, the Tsarist administration in Bessarabia gradually removed the Romanian language from official and religious use. Union with Romania and the return of the Russians. The Treaty of Paris, 1856, returned the southern part of Bessarabia, later organized as the Karhul, Bolgrad and Ishmael counties, to Moldavia, which remained an autonomous principality and, in 1859, united with Wallachia to form Romania. In 1878, as a result of the Treaty of Berlin, Romania was forced to cede the three counties back to the Russian Empire. A multi-ethnic colonization over the 19th century, the Russian authorities encouraged the colonization of Bessarabia or parts of it by Romanians, Budjak, Russians, Ukrainians, Germans, Bulgarians, Poles, and Gagauzes, primarily in the northern and southern areas vacated by Turks and Nogais, the latter having been expelled in the 1770s and 1780s, during the Russo-Turkish Wars. the inclusion of the province in the Pale of Settlement also allowed the immigration of more Bessarabian Jews. The Romanian proportion of the population decreased from an estimated 86% in 1816, to around 52% in 1905. During this time there were anti-Semitic riots, leading to an exodus of thousands of Jews to the United States. Russian Revolution World War I brought in a rise in political and cultural, ethnic, awareness among the inhabitants of the region, as 300,000 Bessarabians were drafted into the Russian army formed in 1917. Within bigger units several, Moldavian soldiers' committees, were formed. Following the Russian Revolution of 1917, a Bessarabian parliament, Sfatul, a national council, was elected in October–November 1917 and opened on 3 December, OS 21 November, 1917. The Sfatul proclaimed the Moldavian Democratic Republic, 15 December, OS 2 December, 1917, within a federal Russian state, and formed a government, 21 December, OS 8 December, 1917. Greater Romania. After the Romanian army occupied the region in early January 1918 at the request of the National Council, Bessarabia proclaimed independence from Russia on 6 February, OS 24 January, 1918 and requested the assistance of the French army present in Romania, General Henry Berthelot, and of the Romanian army. On 9 April, OS 27 March, 1918, the Sfatul decided with 86 votes for, 3 against and 36 abstaining, to unite with the Kingdom of Romania. The union was conditional upon fulfillment of the agrarian reform, autonomy, and respect for universal human rights. A part of the interim parliament agreed to drop these conditions after Bukovina and Transylvania also joined the Kingdom of Romania, although historians note that they lacked the quorum to do so. This union was recognized by most of the principal Allied powers in the 1920 Treaty of Paris, which however was not ratified by all of its signatories. The newly Soviet Russia did not recognize Romanian rule over Bessarabia, considering it an occupation of Russian territory. Uprisings against Romanian rule took place in 1919 at Cotton and Bender, but were eventually suppressed by the Romanian army. In May 1919, the Bessarabian Soviet Socialist Republic was proclaimed as a government in exile. After the failure of the Tatarbunary uprising in 1924, the Moldavian Autonomous Region, created earlier in the Transnistria region, was elevated to an autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic within the Ukrainian SSR. World War II and Soviet-era annexation by the USSR in August 1939, the Molotov–Ribbentrop Pact and its secret additional protocol was signed, by which Nazi Germany recognized Bessarabia as being within the Soviet sphere of influence, which led the latter to actively revive its claim to the region. On 28 June 1940, the Soviet Union issued an ultimatum to Romania requesting the cession of Bessarabia and northern Bukovina, with which Romania complied the following day. Soon after, the Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic, Moldavian SSR, MSSR, was established, comprising about 65% of Bessarabia, and 50% of the now disbanded Moldavian ASSR, the present-day Transnistria. Ethnic Germans left in 1940. Reincorporation into Romania and the Soviet occupation as part of the 1941 Axis invasion of the Soviet Union, Romania regained the territories of Bessarabia and northern Bukovina, and seized a territory which became known as Transnistria Governorate. Romanian forces, working with the Germans, deported or massacred about 300,000 Jews, including 147,000 from Bessarabia and Bukovina. Of the latter, approximately 90,000 died. Between 1941 and 1944 partisan detachments acted against the Romanian administration. The Soviet army recaptured the region in February–August 1944, and re-established the Moldavian SSR. Between the end of the Second Jassy-Kishinev offensive in August 1944 and the end of the war in May 1945, 256,800 inhabitants of the Moldavian SSR were drafted into the Soviet army. 40,592 of them perished. During the periods 19,401,941 and 19,441,953, deportations of locals to the northern Urals, to Siberia, and northern Kazakhstan occurred regularly, with the largest ones on 12–13 June 1941, and 56 July 1949, accounting from MSSR alone for 18,392 and 35,796 deportees respectively. Other forms of Soviet persecution of the population included political arrests or, in 8,360 cases, execution.
Moldova in the USSR after World War II.
In 1946, as a result of a severe drought and excessive delivery quota obligations and requisitions imposed by the Soviet government, the southwestern part of the USSR suffered from a major famine. In 19,461,947, at least 216,000 deaths and about 350,000 cases of dystrophy were accounted by historians in the Moldavian SSR alone. Similar events occurred in the 1930s in the Moldavian ASSR. In 1944-53, there were several anti-Soviet resistance groups in Moldova. However, the NKVD and later MGB managed to eventually arrest, execute or deport their members. In the post-war period, the Soviet government organized the immigration of working-age Russian speakers, mostly Russians, Belarusians, and Ukrainians, into the new Soviet Republic, especially into urbanized areas, partly to compensate for the demographic loss caused by the war and the emigration of 1940 and 1944. In the 1970s and 1980s, the Moldavian SSR received substantial allocations from the budget of the USSR to develop industrial and scientific facilities and housing. In 1971, the Council of Ministers of the USSR adopted a decision about the measures for further development of the city of Chisinau, modern Chiinu, that allotted more than 1 billion rubles, approximately $6.8 billion in 2018 US dollars, from the USSR budget for building projects. The Soviet government conducted a campaign to promote a Moldovan ethnic identity distinct from that of the Romanians, based on a theory developed during the existence of the Moldavian ASSR. Official Soviet policy asserted that the language spoken by Moldovans was distinct from the Romanian language. See Moldovanism. To distinguish the two, during the Soviet period, Moldovan was written in the Cyrillic alphabet, in contrast with Romanian, which since 1860 had been written in the Latin alphabet. All independent organizations were severely reprimanded, with the National Patriotic Front leaders being sentenced in 1972 to long prison terms. The Commission for the Study of the Communist Dictatorship in Moldova is assessing the activity of the communist totalitarian regime.
Glasnost and Perestroika.
In the 1980s, amid political conditions created by Glasnost and Perestroika, a democratic movement of Moldova was formed, which in 1989 became known as the Nationalist Popular Front of Moldova, FPM. Along with several other Soviet republics, from 1988 onwards, Moldova started to move towards independence. On 27 August 1989, the FPM organized a mass demonstration in Chiinu that became known as the Grand National Assembly. The assembly pressured the authorities of the Moldavian SSR to adopt a language law on 31 August 1989 that proclaimed the Moldovan language written in the Latin script to be the state language of the MSSR. Its identity with the Romanian language was also established. In 1989, as opposition to the Communist Party grew, there were major riots in November.
Independence and aftermath.
The first democratic elections for the local parliament were held in February and March 1990. Mircea Snegor was elected as Speaker of the Parliament, and Mircea Druc as Prime Minister. On 23 June 1990, the Parliament adopted the Declaration of Sovereignty of the Soviet Socialist Republic Moldova, which, among other things, stipulated the supremacy of Moldovan laws over those of the Soviet Union. After the failure of the 1991 Soviet coup d'état attempt, Moldova declared its independence on 27 August 1991. On 21 December of the same year, Moldova, along with most of the other Soviet republics, signed the constitutive act that formed the post-Soviet Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS. Moldova received official recognition on 25 December. On 26 December 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. Declaring itself a neutral state, Moldova did not join the military branch of the CIS. 3 months later, on 2 March 1992, the country gained formal recognition as an independent state at the United Nations. In 1994, Moldova became a member of NATO's Partnership for Peace program, and a member of the Council of Europe on 29 June 1995.
Transnistria breaks away, 1990 to present.
In the region east of the Dniester River, Transnistria, which includes a large proportion of predominantly Russophone East Slavs of Ukrainian, 28%, and Russian, 26%, descent, altogether 54% as of 1989, an independent Pridnestrovian Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic was proclaimed on 16 August 1990, with its capital in Tiraspol. The motives behind this move were fear of the rise of nationalism in Moldova. In the winter of 19,911,992, clashes occurred between Transnistrian forces, supported by elements of the Russian 14th Guards Army, and the Moldovan police. Between 2 March and 26 July 1992, the conflict escalated into a military engagement. It was a brief war between Moldovan and separatist Transnistrian forces, with Russia intervening militarily on Transnistria's side. It ended with a ceasefire and the establishment of a security zone policed by a three-way peacekeeping force of Russian, Transnistrian, and Moldovan personnel.
Market economy, 1992.
On 2 January 1992, Moldova introduced a market economy, liberalizing prices, which resulted in rapid inflation. From 1992 to 2001, the country suffered a serious economic crisis, leaving most of the population below the poverty line. In 1993, the government of Moldova introduced a new national currency, the Moldovan leu, to replace the temporary kapon. The economy of Moldova began to change in 2001, and until 2008, the country saw a steady annual growth between 5% and 10%. The early 2000s also saw a considerable growth of emigration of Moldovans looking for work, mostly illegally, in Russia, especially the Moscow region, Italy, Portugal, Spain, and other countries. Remittances from Moldovans abroad account for almost 38% of Moldova's GDP, the second highest percentage in the world, after Tajikistan, 45%.
Elections, 19,942,009.
In the 1994 parliamentary elections, the Agrarian Party gained a majority of the seats, setting a turning point in Moldovan politics. With the Nationalist Popular Front now in a parliamentary minority, new measures aiming to moderate the ethnic tensions in the country could be adopted. Plans for a union with Romania were abandoned, and the new constitution gave autonomy to the breakaway Transnistria and Gagauzia. On 23 December 1994, the Parliament of Moldova adopted a law on the special legal status of Gagauzia, and in 1995, the latter was constituted. After winning the 1996 presidential elections, on 15 January 1997, Petru Lusanci, the former first secretary of the Moldavian Communist Party in 1989-91, became the country's second president, 19,972,001. Succeeding Mircea Snegor, 19,911,996. In 2000, the constitution was amended, transforming Moldova into a parliamentary republic, with the president being chosen through indirect election rather than direct popular vote. Winning 49.9% of the vote, the Party of Communists of the Republic of Moldova, reinstituted in 1993 after being outlawed in 1991, gained 71 of the 101 MPs, and on 4 April 2001, elected Vladimir Voronin as the country's third president, re-elected in 2005. The country became the first post-Soviet state where a non-reformed Communist Party returned to power. New governments were formed by Vasile Tarlif, the 19th of April 2001, the 31st of March 2008, and Zinaida Greciani, the 31st of March 2008, the 14th of September 2009. In 20,012,003, relations between Moldova and Russia improved, but then temporarily deteriorated in 20,032,006, in the wake of the failure of the Kozak Memorandum, culminating in the 2006 wine exports crisis. The Party of Communists of the Republic of Moldova managed to stay in power for 8 years. In the April 2009 parliamentary elections, the Communist Party won 49.48% of the votes, followed by the Liberal Party with 13.14% of the votes, the Liberal Democratic Party with 12.43%, and the Alliance, Moldova Nosta, with 9.77%. The controversial results of this election sparked the April 2009 Moldovan parliamentary election protests.
Stalemate, 20,092,012.
In August 2009, 4 Moldovan parties, Liberal Democratic Party, Liberal Party, Democratic Party, and Our Moldova Alliance, agreed to create the Alliance for European Integration that pushed the Party of Communists of the Republic of Moldova into opposition. On 28 August 2009, This coalition chose a new parliament speaker, Mihai Gimpu, in a vote that was boycotted by communist legislators. Vladimir Voronin, who had been president of Moldova since 2001, eventually resigned on the 11th of September 2009, but the parliament failed to elect a new president. The acting president Mihai Gimpu instituted the Commission for Constitutional Reform in Moldova to adopt a new version of the Constitution of Moldova. After the constitutional referendum aimed to approve the reform failed in September 2010, the parliament was dissolved again and a new parliamentary election was scheduled for 28 November 2010. On 30 December 2010, Marian Lupu was elected as the Speaker of the Parliament and the acting President of the Republic of Moldova. In March 2012, Nicolae Timofte was elected as President of Moldova in a parliamentary vote, becoming the first full-time president since Vladimir Voronin, a communist, resigned in September 2009. Before the election of Timofte, Moldova had had 3 acting presidents in 3 years. After the Alliance for European Integration lost a no-confidence vote, the pro-European coalition was formed on 30 May 2013.
Banking crisis.
In November 2014, Moldova's central bank took control of Banca de Economie, the country's largest lender, and 2 smaller institutions, Banca Socială and Unibank. Investigations into activities at these 3 banks uncovered large-scale fraud by means of fraudulent loans to business entities controlled by a Moldovan-Israeli business oligarch, Ilan Shor, of funds worth about $1 billion. The large scale of the fraud compared to the size of the Moldovan economy is cited as tilting the country's politics in favor of the pro-Russian Party of Socialists of the Republic of Moldova. Shor was convicted of fraud and money laundering and sentenced to 15 years in prison.
Pavel Filip's government, 20,162,019.
Following a period of political instability and massive public protests, a new government led by Pavel Filip was invested in January 2016. Concerns over statewide corruption, the independence of the judiciary system, and the non-transparency of the banking system were expressed. Germany's broadcaster Deutsche Welle also raised concerns about the alleged influence of Moldovan oligarch Vladimir Plahotniuc over the Filip government. In the December 2016 presidential election, socialist, pro-Russian Igor Dodon was elected as the new president of the republic.
2019 constitutional crisis.
In 2019, from 7 to 15 June, the Moldovan government went through a period of dual power in what is known as the 2019 Moldovan constitutional crisis. On 7 June, the Constitutional Court, which is largely believed to be controlled by Vladimir Plahotniuc from the Democratic Party, announced that they had temporarily removed the sitting president, Igor Dodon, from power due to his inability to call new parliamentary elections as the parliament did not form a coalition within 3 months of the validation of the election results. According to Moldovan constitutional law, the president may call snap elections if no government is formed after 3 months. However, on 8 June, the now platformed DA and PAR reached an agreement with the Socialist Party, forming a government led by Maia Sandu as the new prime minister, pushing the Democratic Party out of power. This new government was also supported by Igor Dodon. The new coalition and Igor Dodon argued that the president may call snap elections after consulting the parliament but is not obliged to do so. Additionally, because the election results were verified on 9 March, 3 months should be interpreted as 3 calendar months, not 90 days as was the case. The former Prime Minister, Pavel Filip from the Democratic Party, said that new parliamentary elections would be held on 6 September and refused to recognize the new coalition, calling it an illegal government. After a week of dual government meetings, some protest, and the international community mostly supporting the new government coalition, Pavel Filip stepped down as Prime Minister but still called for new elections. The Constitutional Court reversed the decision on 15 June, effectively ending the crisis.